Hi friends, welcome to the very first episode of the Fantasy True Crime Podcast, telepathically streamed to you over the threads of magic. I'm your host, Esla, and in today's episode, we're going to be talking about the recent tragic disappearance of Shadra Whitesun, a 12-year-old half-elf girl from Midriver who vanished on her way to her hunting lessons. Now, guards are still currently looking for Shadra, and her family has not given up hope. Shadra left her house just before sunrise on the 13th moon of Risco Rain. She was heading to her hunting lessons in the Evergreen Woods. Shadra was last seen by a bystander near the intersection of Astor Street and Bramble Street, shortly after she left home for her lesson. At the time of her disappearance, she was wearing brown leather hunting armor and a gold pin with the silhouette of a buck pinned to her chest. She was also carrying her bow and a handful of arrows. Shadra has long brown hair that she was wearing braided down her back, bright white eyes, is 91 centimeters tall, and weighs 13.6 kilograms. Additionally, a wooden cart pulled by 2 black horses has been named as a vehicle of interest in this case. If you have any information at all regarding this case, please contact the Midriver Guards. Additionally, there will be a march up and down the streets of Midriver in 6 moons when the sun is at its apex. Shadra's case is still active, and all of this information is current as of the transmitting of this episode on the 17th moon of Risco Rain. Now, let's get into this. First, I want to start off with some backstory so that you can really get to know Shadra as a half-elf child. Shadra Whitesun was born on the 4th moon of Garth Rain to parents Lilith and Kina Whitesun. Shadra is an only child and is described by her parents as being very adventurous, independent, and outgoing. When Shadra was only 5 years old, her father started taking her on hunting trips. Shadra showed a natural ability for hunting and was attentive and alert to her surroundings even at such a young age. In Midriver schools, children get to decide for themselves what classes they're interested in taking, and Shadra's schedule reflects her interest in nature and survival skills. Shadra has been described by her teachers as a skilled survivalist. At just 12 years old, she already excels at hitting critical target points on large game. According to Shadra's best friend, Dove Goldroot, earlier this year, some of the older students at school, likely jealous of Shadra's precocious hunting skills, decided to play a prank on her. After school one day, they lied to Shadra about seeing a large buck on the edge of the forest to the north of the school. Excited about the prospect of practicing her tracking and shooting skills, Shadra set off into the woods with her bow. The older kids were laughing at her perceived naivete. However, when Shadra came back with the head of a massive elk, the older students were quickly humbled. Shadra is not only a skilled survivalist, but she also excels socially in school. Shadra is described by her classmates as a friend to all, and was even known to serve as a mediator and soothe disagreements between the various cliques. Althea Burdock, her foraging teacher, even nicknamed her Mid, in reference to the town Midriver, which was founded as a peaceful trading post between the feuding eastern and northern kingdoms. Like her town itself, Shadra functioned as a peaceful, connective force in her classroom. On the 13th moon of Risco Rain, just before sunrise, Shadra hugged both of her parents goodbye and left home for her morning hunting class. The hunting class was held at the trailhead of the Evergreen Woods, just 1.2 kilometers from her Midriver home. Shadra had been walking to her hunting class alone ever since she started the classes 2 years ago. Her mother was hesitant at first to let her walk alone, but decided to allow it because Midriver has a reputation of being a very safe town. Shadra's parents expected her to be home from her lesson around midday. Her mother even prepared a meal for the family, expecting Shadra to be hungry after her lessons. When the food began to grow cold and Shadra was still not home, her parents began to worry. Now, Shadra was always known as an adventurous girl, but she was also very respectful of rules and had never returned home late. Her parents immediately began to panic, and her father rode his horse as fast as he could to the Midriver guard tower, while Lilith stayed behind in case Shadra were to return home. Initially, the guards did not take her parents' concerns seriously and told her father to return if Shadra did not arrive home by sunset. However, Lilith and Kina knew their daughter, and they knew that she was far too responsible to disappear without letting her parents know where she was. Without the help of the guards, Kina set off on horseback along the path that Shadra would have taken to the Evergreen Woods where her hunting lessons were held. After Keena continued to travel along the path and saw no trace of his daughter, he began to grow increasingly panicked. When Keena finally arrived at the Evergreen Woods, he saw Bale Arnberger, Shadra's hunting instructor, and a young student gathering guns and equipment in preparation for a lesson. When Keena asked Bale when his daughter's lesson had ended, Bale replied that Shadra had never shown up to her lesson that morning. Keena said that at this moment his heart sank. He knew that his daughter would never miss a hunting lesson. Something had to be wrong. Keena traveled back to the guard tower and updated the guards again with this new information. Now that the guards were aware that Shadra had been missing since the sunrise, they finally began to take the case more seriously. They began their search by interviewing both Shadra's parents and Bale Arnberger. Lilith and Keena were, of course, very cooperative with the guards and asserted that Shadra was a very happy and responsible girl who loved her family and enjoyed school and her hunting lessons. There was no reason to believe that she would run away. Now, when the guards interviewed Bale, he apparently seemed surprised that he was being questioned. Even though he had been confronted by Shadra's clearly distressed father looking for his daughter only hours earlier. When questioned as to why he did not contact Shadra's parents or the guards when she did not show up for her lesson, Bale was quoted as saying, "I just didn't think much of it. I figured she'd overslept, or maybe she felt like she had better things to do. You know how kids are at that age." Now, you may notice that Bale's perspective lies in stark contrast to the way that Shadra's parents, as well as her friends and other teachers, describe her. We will get to what Shadra's parents think of Bale and his attitude towards the investigation later in the episode. Now, I'd like to take a brief second to talk about today's sponsor. This may be our first installment, but we are lucky enough to have some financial backers that were interested in helping spread the word about missing persons and crimes across our land. Today's inaugural episode is sponsored by Midriver's own Sal's Fine Carpet Emporium. Sal got word of Shadra's disappearance, and even though he's never met the family, he wanted to make sure a fund was started to help pay for anything they may need to help keep the search going. Sal will donate and match 10% of any purchase made at Sal's Fine Carpet Emporium for a total of 20%, and donate that amount directly to Shadra's mother and father. Now, this is a very charitable deal, but you're also getting some extraordinary craftsmanship. I personally have one of his signature crown-shaped carpets made of only the best sheep's wool in my dining area. Sal's Fine Carpet Emporium, there's not a beast you can't walk on. The guards then began to search for clues along Shadra's 1.2-kilometer route between home and the Evergreen Woods. Word spread quickly in Midriver about the missing half-elf girl, and a search party soon formed to help guards and Shadra's parents with the search. On the 13th moon of Risco Rain, only 3 hours after the search began, the first clue was discovered. Shadra's bow was found in some tall grass about half a mile away from the village near the practice hunting grounds. The bow was found alone, without any arrows. When forensic testing was later done, some magical residue was found in the upper limb of the bow. Experts believe that this residue originated from the School of Evocation. However, there was not enough residue present to pinpoint or even narrow down the list of spells that may have been used. The presence of this residue raised some major concerns. You see, Shadra was not yet certified to purchase enhancements, and likely would not have been able to obtain any enchanted items herself. This led guards to believe that the residue was left by another individual, possibly the individual involved in Shadra's disappearance. As I'm sure you can imagine, it did not take long for Bale Arnberger to garner some suspicion from the residents of Midriver, including Shadra's parents. Bale's claim that he figured Shadra had missed class that morning because she felt that she had better things to do definitely rubbed people the wrong way. Shadra's parents later claimed that Shadra had never skipped or even been late to a single hunting lesson in her 2 years of working with Bale Arnberger. In an interview with Midriver Public News Center 2 days after Shadra's disappearance, Shadra's mother emphasized her daughter's enthusiasm for these lessons. She was quoted as saying, "Shadra lived for her hunting lessons. She looked forward to them every week. She would always be up early on her lesson days and would rush out of the house, often skipping breakfast to get there early. I just think that Bale should have known that something was wrong. When she didn't show up that day, he should have known." Shadra's parents are not alone in the belief that Bale should have been more concerned when Shadra did not show up for her lesson that morning. Althea Burdock, Shadra's foraging teacher, the one that gave her the nickname Mid, was quoted as saying, "If a child does not show up for a class or a lesson, I always check with the parents to make sure that they're okay. As educators, that's our job. We should never just brush off absences, especially not for a young student like Shadra who walks to her lessons alone." Bale's general callousness and seeming lack of concern towards both Kina when he came looking for his daughter and during the interviews certainly has not helped his case. Now, this is not the first time that Bale Arnberger has garnered the suspicion of Midriver. A few years back, a 16-year-old student by the name of Shadra Whitesun, who had been training under Bale for 6 years, suddenly quit hunting training and began to speak out against Bale's overly aggressive teaching practices. Shadra claimed that Bale would hit his students with sticks while they were trying to aim and fire their arrows in order to stimulate, quote-unquote, the heat of battle. Bale argued that he never hit his students hard enough to hurt them, but that he tapped them with sticks in order to attempt to distract them and help them train their focus. However, after Shadra spoke out, the Midriver Board of Education ordered Bale to cease any physical contact with his students, or else he would lose his license. Although Bale begrudgingly agreed to stop this type of training, many residents of Midriver believe that he still employs it with his students whom he deems high level, or more likely, students who he believes won't report him. In fact, following her disappearance, Shadra's parents reported that she often came home from hunting class with suspicious bruising on her shoulder and calves, although she always insisted that these marks came from falls or other accidents. Because Shadra was so active and was often climbing trees and running around in the woods, her parents allowed Shadra to dismiss their concerns. In retrospect, Lilith says that she wishes she would have tried harder to find out what was going on. Of course, kids Shadra's age get scrapes and bruises all the time, and there was no way that her parents could have known that anything else was going on. When Midriver guards called Bale into their station for further questioning, he seemed shocked that he would be considered a person of interest in Shadra's case. When questioned, Bale held firm to his original story. Shadra had simply not shown up for her lesson that morning, and he was not concerned because, quote-unquote, kids don't show up for their lessons all the time. When asked if Shadra had ever not shown up for a lesson before, Bale stated, "Sure, she's missed a couple. As I said, it happens all the time. You can't rely on kids to make commitments." Shadra's parents continue to insist that she has never missed a lesson, and her other teachers all agree that Shadra has never been late or absent for any of their classes. Throughout his interviews with guards, Bale continued to insist that he had no idea where Shadra could be, but that he believes that she is fine and not in any danger. When interviewed by the Midriver Public News Center, Bale was quoted as saying, "I trained her to leave breadcrumbs when she was going somewhere new. Look for those. She's wild. Maybe she's exploring. She's getting to that age." Despite Bale's eyebrow-raising comments and general attitude of nonchalance toward Shadra's disappearance, guards state that he has been fully compliant in the search, even willingly allowing guards to search his home. A search of Bale's house revealed no enchanted items besides a bow gifted from him from the King of the North, which is enchanted to give him a boost to hearing quieter noises. Although Bale is certified to use enchanted weapons, no vendor or magic user in town has sold Bale any enchanted items in the last year. During Bale's interrogation, he insisted multiple times that he does not believe in using magic of any kind. However, during a search of his home, guards found multiple books on the schools of magic locked away in a chest in the closet of his bedroom. When asked about these books, Bale stated that he sees no issue in learning about the magic. He simply chooses not to use it himself. Now, I can understand being interested in magic, even if you don't use it yourself, but I do find it a bit strange that these books would be specifically locked up in a chest and hidden in his closet instead of out with his other books. However, I must note here that Bale has not been named a suspect, and no official suspects have been named in this case so far. Guards claim that Bale has been cooperative throughout the investigation. Please be mindful that Bale and everyone else involved in this case is a real person and is innocent until proven guilty. I am simply presenting the information that has been made available to the public, and this podcast does not condone the harassment of any citizens. Now, I mentioned earlier that Shadra's parents were not the last people who reported seeing Shadra on the morning of her disappearance. This is where Nate comes in. 3 days after Shadra's disappearance, a man by the name of Nate, which is the name used to keep him anonymous, came forward to the guards and said that he saw Shadra around 10 minutes after her parents reported that she left home near the intersection of Bramble Street and Astor Street, headed northeast. This time and location matches up with where Shadra was expected to have been at this time, and was about halfway through her journey to the woods. This is significant because, as I mentioned earlier, Shadra's route from home to her hunting class is not a heavily trafficked area, especially not before sunrise when Shadra was walking. So far, Nate is the only person who has reported seeing Shadra on the morning of her disappearance. Nate claims that he passed Shadra when he was heading in the opposite direction on his way to work at a farm in the southwest corner of Midriver. He remembers smiling at Shadra and saying good morning, and remembers her saying good morning in return. Nate claims that Shadra seemed cheerful and was walking quickly, and that there was nothing unusual about the encounter. Nate's statement was particularly noteworthy because he reported that Shadra was wearing a shiny golden pin on her chest with the silhouette of a buck. This detail is significant because Shadra's parents gave a very detailed description of what she was wearing on the day of her disappearance, and they did not mention the pin. When asked about it, Lilith, Shadra's mom, claimed that the pin was hers and that she did not notice her daughter wearing it that day. She concluded that Shadra must have put the pin on after leaving the house. Lilith confirmed that her pin was indeed missing from her dresser, where it was always stored. According to Shadra's parents, it is surprising that Shadra would choose to wear this pin on this day. Lilith claims that Shadra had seen the pin before in her dresser, but that she had never expressed any special interest in it, nor had she ever asked to wear it. Both of her parents assert that they would have noticed if Shadra was wearing the pin when she left home. Not only because the pin is very shiny and noticeable, but also because it apparently holds a special significance to them. However, this significance has not been publicly explained. The buck pin may or may not be an important detail in Shadra's case. Nevertheless, it does confirm that Nate's sighting of Shadra that morning was accurate, which can help the guards to more accurately narrow down the timeline for this case. As for the significance of the pin itself, it's possible that Shadra sneaking the pin from her parents' room holds some meaning, especially considering Lilith and Keena's cryptic statements regarding the pin and its importance. However, it is also very possible that Shadra just felt like wearing the pin and snuck it out of the house because she knew that her mom would object to her wearing it to hunting practice, where it could potentially get lost. The last potential lead for this case that has been released publicly comes in the form of a suspicious vehicle that was sighted on the morning of Shadra's disappearance. In the afternoon on the day of Shadra's disappearance, 4 hours after guards started their search, Robin Aronia arrived at the guard tower to report the sighting of a suspicious vehicle on his property that morning. Aronia is a sheep farmer who has 10 acres of land in North Midriver. Aronia claims that shortly before sunrise that morning, he was out feeding his flock in the field beside his home when he noticed a wooden carriage pulled by 2 black horses about 1.5 kilometers out from where he was standing. Now, Aronia's property is private land, and this specific spot where he saw the carriage was about 5 kilometers away from any public roads, so it was very suspicious to see an unknown carriage in that area. Because of the distance and the morning fog, Aronia could not make out any fine details about the carriage or its driver. He said that he assumed the driver was male based on the general size and shape of him, but that he could not give any more specific details other than that he was wearing black, had a pale complexion, and was driving 2 black horses in a wooden cart. Aronia claimed that when he first noticed the cart, it was facing towards the southeast border of his property. He then ran inside to retrieve his gun in case the mysterious visitor caused any problems, and when he returned outside, the cart was walking along the fence line, still headed towards the southeast border of his property. Not wanting any trouble, Aronia figured that he should just let the man continue on his way and would remain on high alert for the rest of the day in case the visitor should return or cause any problems. However, when he heard that a young girl had gone missing around the same time that he saw the mysterious intruder, Aronia figured that he should report his sighting to the guards. Because Aronia's property borders the field where Shadra's bow was found, guards are taking this tip seriously and are asking for any more information regarding the carriage. This case is still active and guards are still searching tirelessly to bring Shadra home. Unfortunately, no more clues have been found as to Shadra's whereabouts, at least none that have been made available to the public. Guards have stated that they are currently following a few leads, but no additional information has been made public. Shadra's parents are still hopeful that she will be found alive.